What's up, guys and gals? This is building a stock market tracking application with react.js part 2. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel if you like this series. We're going to be posting new content every day. This series will go on for a bit, and we have a couple of others we're going to be kicking off shortly. Also, as always, be sure to click down into the description for lots of free resources and some free stuff that we're working on from our business. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. In part one, we basically looked at how we could use the IEX Cloud API to start pulling back some stock market data. So in this episode, we're going to go ahead and kick off the React app. So to do this, you'll need a recent version of Node.js. I'm not as familiar with the React ecosystem as I am other things like Ruby, maybe. As I said in the last episode, I'm doing this to kind of learn. So if you're watching this, a year or two in the future, it's currently April the 10th, 2020. If you're watching this in the future, there may be some breaking changes or something like that. So if you have a problem and you solve it, definitely leave something in the comments. In future episodes and future series, as I learn more, I'll try to call things out that I know could be potentially going wrong. But for now, you just need to go ahead and install a recent version of Node, and then you'll be able to do something like this. You'll say npx create react app, and then I'm going to just call this one stock tracker. And this may take a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and let this run. All right, great. So it looks like this finished. I'm just trying to scan through here and see if there's anything. So it looks like I'm running React at 16.13.1. Not sure if that's even the most recent version, but it's good to point it out so you know. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to be getting myself more up to date as I go. Right now, I'm just trying to work this out, and hopefully it's useful to you. So with that said, I'm going to actually let's cd down into stock tracker. So let's see what's in here right now. So we have our node modules, package JSON, all that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and install Bootstrap. If you don't like Bootstrap, I apologize, but it's what I know, so we're just going to use it. If you don't want to use it, this one you could consider optional if you have a preference, but you'll just have to translate whatever I do into whatever you prefer. So again, I'm going to go ahead and pause while this installs because it might take a second. Okay, great. So that finished, no problems. So now I can go ahead and run yarn start. I'm also assuming that you're a little bit familiar with JavaScript, just so you know. So if you're a pure beginner to programming, you may want to check out some introductory JavaScript lessons somewhere before you go through this. But otherwise, just follow along and hopefully it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we're kicking up a development server. It's opening localhost 3000. I'm going to go ahead and close down this Bootstrap tab because I don't need that. All right, so I'm going to open a new tab in my terminal and open up Atom, which is the text editor that I'm using. So here we go. We have our stock tracker app right here. Move that up a little bit here, just kind of get a little organized. So I'm not going to need a huge amount of window space on this. I'm just going to move that like that and give myself a little more room in my text editor. Okay, so let's just quickly take a look at what we've got right now. So as you can see over here on the right, and if you're already a React developer or something, this may be a little bit dull, but you can see here we need to edit source app.js. So if we open up our source directory and look at app.js, we can see here that we're bringing in React from React. We're importing a logo, which is this logo SVG right here. We're bringing in some CSS, and we are, just putting out this basically HTML. This is actually JSX technically, but for now I'm just going to call it HTML because it's easier to remember for me. But anyway, so you see where the content's coming from. So we're just actually going to get rid of all of this because we don't need it. And that will automatically update over here on the right, and we'll have a blank screen. Okay, so also I'm going to get rid of this app.css and I'm going to paste in our Bootstrap line. So this comes from that page I was on before. And then here, let's just print out a paragraph tag that says hello. And you can see that we're up here in the top left corner. So if we switch back to the app.css here, you'll see that change. Failed to compile. I need to do /app.css. So that you can see the styles are actually switching from the default to the Bootstrap here. So now I've got Bootstrap plugged in. So in this episode, the main thing that I want to do is just get our data pulling in from the stock market API and display it in a way that's kind of reasonable. So we're going to end up removing most of this code once we implement our real design for the application and start roughing that out. But for now, I just want to kind of stick in some placeholder content so that we can actually get a little bit of visual feedback on what's going on with the data and so on. So inside of this app div, basically, I'm just going to start putting in some stuff. So I'm going to put another div, and instead of class, you have to use class name in JSX because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. I heard that may change, but I don't know the status of that, so I'm just going to keep with class name because it works. So we have div class name container. We're going to close this, and if we put back just hello, we should see that bump in a little bit because it's inside of the container. Inside of this div, I'm going to put a table, class name equals table, and then Bootstrap has some utilities for margins. I'm going to put the margin top 5, which is their sort of largest amount of margin, I think, that comes default. Inside of here, I'm going to put a t head. And let's see, so we want to do a tr. So if you remember from the first episode, what we were looking at is, so we want to know the stock price, or let's say the ticker. But what we were kind of concerning ourselves with, sorry, I'm trying to think and talk at the same time, and it's not working. So what we want to do is say the price, but then we also want to verify like when is the data coming in from. So if you remember yesterday when we looked at that, it was 8 o'clock at night, so the stock market had closed. And we have a question about how fresh is the data we're getting, because we're using the free version of the API and we're not completely sure what data we actually can access. So we're going to go ahead and put the date and the time in here, so that we can see when the most recent data was coming from. So that way, if it's actually from yesterday, we can see that pretty transparently and know what we're actually getting. All right, so I saved my file, and you can see over here on the right, our page refreshed, and now we have a table with 4 column headers. So what I'm going to do now is sort of pretend like I've already got all of the components that I need to make this fully functional. So I think that you would call this top-down programming. I think I saw that or had that in a class at some point. But basically, it's where you write the code that you eventually will have, and kind of you're designing from the top down, basically. Makes sense. If somebody knows the actual term, feel free to drop that in the comments. So inside of here, what we want to do is say for each... Well, for every stock we want, and eventually we'll even back this out a little bit further, but I'm going to pretend that I have something called a stock row, and I'm going to pass in a ticker, and I'm just going to say Apple for now, and I'm going to add like 4 of these. And so we'll add Apple, Google, I don't know, Microsoft, and maybe Tesla. Hopefully I get all these tickers right. And I'll save this, and it's going to blow up because we don't have this this element. So what we're going to do is up here at the top, we're going to go ahead and import stock row from /components stockrow.js. So we'll save this, and now it's going to actually give us a different error, can't resolve to component stock row. So now we need to create a file. So we're going to create a new folder actually first called components. And then inside of here, I'm going to create a new file called stockrow.js. So what we need to do here, so expected a string. Okay, so we have some problems here we need to fix. So we need to go ahead and import react and component. Actually, this needs to be component from react. And we need to define a class. So what I'm going to do is say class stockrow extends component. And then down here we're going to say export default stock row. And then in here I just need to get this going, I just need a render method. And then we'll just return for now a p tag that says hi. And actually that's going to mess up because it's, well, let's just save it and we'll see what happens. So we see hi printed out everywhere. If we open up the console over here, it's going to be angry with us. So this is actually a useful thing to know. So if you open up the JavaScript console while you're working, it will tell you, it'll still work over here, but it's going to tell you like, hey, that's not a valid child element. So what we actually need to do over here is say like tr, and I'm going to go ahead and like do this right, return tr, and then we'll have td 4 times, right? And then here we can just have like so this should fill out our table and make all these warnings go away. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close this because that's obnoxious. And then back over here, let's go ahead and print out the ticker. So to do that, if you remember, we passed in, when we called stock row, we added this attribute ticker. So this is where JSX and HTML are very similar looking but very different. So this is obviously not a standard HTML element. This is a component that we defined and imported. And then we're giving this ticker attribute. So it looks like HTML, but it's different, obviously. So the way that we can access that, though, is through this variable called props. So what this is, when we pass in these attributes, what we're actually doing is passing in a prop or property. So let's say this is our ticker column, right? So we can use curly brackets and we can say this.props.ticker. So if we save, it should just refresh over here on the right with all of our tickers. Okay, cool. So that's working. So the next thing we need to do is actually bring in the real data. And I'm trying to make these videos a little bit more bite-sized because I have a tendency to create very long videos. So I'm going to go ahead and cut here, and I'm just going to pick straight up in the next video with pulling in the data from the API and putting it into the component. So I will see you in the next video.